The FBI is on the case of a missing Texas man they say bragged about stealing thousands of dollars from a Mexican cartel and then disappeared just 2 hours later.
In the late hours of March 12, 2023, the gruesome execution of an American unfolded before the world, with no one able to intervene. Brutally dragged into a cartel truck, it would be the last time he was ever seen, leaving his family, friends, and country in deep sorrow. But it only gets more horrifying from here. Today we are pulling back on the stories of 6 tourists who messed with the wrong cartel. They unknowingly walked into territories controlled by ruthless cartels and never came out alive. Brace yourself, because the final case will leave you in tears. Number 1. The disappearance of Eric Ramirez. On March 12, 2023, what began as a party quickly turned into a nightmare. Eric Tadeo Ramirez, a man from Texas, reportedly bragged about taking $50,000 from the Cartel del Noreste, also known as CDN, a cartel notorious for kidnappings and cross-border smuggling. Hours later, at around 11:45 p.m., masked gunmen appeared at his home in Laredo, Texas. They stormed the gathering, pointed weapons at everyone, and forced Ramirez into a black truck. Partygoers described seeing the terrified man struggling as the vehicle moved off. Surveillance footage captured the desperate moments as Ramirez, bloodied, tried to climb out of the moving truck while crossing the border into Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. The truck sped through streets lined with dim lights, witnesses hearing shouts but powerless to intervene. One of the suspects, Jonathan Cabriales, was later caught trying to cross back into the United States in the same truck, blood smears on his hands and clothes still visible. He faced charges related to the abduction, but Ramirez himself remains missing, leaving authorities and family members with only questions. The party had been filled with friends, alcohol, and laughter. Several of Ramirez's relatives, including a younger brother and parents, later told investigators that he had recently spoken about money he had acquired through illicit means, perhaps underestimating the reach and seriousness of CDN. The cartel operates across the US-Mexico border, enforcing debts and punishing those who cross them. Investigators suggested Ramirez's boasting about the money likely triggered the attack, with the cartel treating it as a challenge to their authority. Neighbors reported seeing multiple vehicles circling the area that night, and law enforcement believes several armed men coordinated the abduction. The victims at the party were threatened but released. Only Ramirez was forcibly taken. The case is still open, and Mexican authorities have limited cooperation across the border, leaving a chilling uncertainty over Ramirez's fate. Think your country's borders are bulletproof? Think again, and from a lone bragging tourist, we now move to another more terrifying case. Number 2. Surfer's dream turned deadly. The Robinson brothers and Jack Carter.
A grim discovery at a scenic site. 3 bodies found in the area where 2 Australians and 1 American were reported missing after their sons went missing during a surf holiday with their American friend Jack Carter Road. Mexican authorities say they were killed execution style, all 3 shot in the head.
On April 27th, what started as a dream trip would end as one of the most horrifying tragedies of 2024. On that fateful day, 3 friends, 2 Australian brothers, Jake and Callum Robinson, and their American companion Jack Carter Road packed up their surfboards. Throwing their gear in a white Chevrolet pickup, they crossed from San Diego into Mexico. Their goal was simple: catch waves, camp by the ocean, and make memories. But what awaited them was a nightmare buried deep in the Mexican dirt, one they would never wake up from. The 3 men were last seen setting up a small campsite near a popular surfing area. Neighbors later reported seeing their vehicle abandoned, with no lights or movement. By the next morning, their families back home had grown anxious after no updates surfaced. Calls went unanswered, social media went dormant, and that silence triggered a search effort that quickly escalated into a full investigation. Search teams discovered their burnt pickup truck, its tires shredded and windows shattered, and a tent destroyed by fire. But like that wasn't enough. In a 50-foot deep pit nearby, they found the bodies of all 3 men. Each had been shot in the head. The authorities' first theory was that the men had resisted a robbery attempt. Tires are highly valuable in areas where cartels dominate, and thieves often target travelers who carry expensive vehicles. But court files later revealed a chilling truth. The men had been confronted by individuals with ties to an organized crime group operating along the Baja coast. Investigators determined that the confrontation had likely started over a minor dispute. Witnesses reported seeing strangers loitering near the Robinsons' campsite the night before. Security camera footage from a nearby roadside showed a dark vehicle circling the area hours before the bodies were found. Law enforcement linked the suspects to local cartel activity. These were not random thieves, but people who enforced rules with lethal efficiency. Jake and Callum were both married, leaving behind young children in Australia, while Jack was the oldest sibling in his family, responsible for supporting his mother. Their sudden deaths devastated their families, who struggled to understand how a holiday could end in such a calculated attack. The suspects, according to authorities, are still being pursued, though cross-border legal complications have slowed progress. The case drew attention to how cartel influence stretches beyond local criminal circles, making even unarmed tourists targets if they cross the wrong people at the wrong time. Vacation plans became a death sentence. Surfboards turned into silent markers of what the three men lost. Danger can arrive suddenly, unannounced, and in ways no one anticipates. For the Robinson brothers and Jack Carter, the scoreboard of survival flipped in an instant, leaving only questions, grief, and cautionary tales. Think you can roll into foreign territory like it's home? This story shows how quickly the scoreboard can flip, and if you think that was an isolated tragedy, the next case proves something entirely different. Number 3, a night out, a bill, a cartel, the case of Victor Masson. The story of Victor Masson was the kind that begins with laughter and ends in gunfire. On May 14, 2023, 27-year-old Canadian tourist Victor Masson went out for a few drinks alone while on vacation with his girlfriend. Inside a small bar, he mingled with strangers, 2 men and 2 women. The evening started casually, words exchanged lightly, drinks flowing, but when the bill arrived, the night took a sharp turn. A disagreement about splitting the cost escalated, voices rose and tempers flared. One man reportedly accused Masson of being cheap, while Masson defended himself. What seemed like a minor dispute quickly gained dangerous edges. After leaving the bar, Masson contacted local emergency services to report a robbery and sent a warning to his girlfriend. If she ever received a message saying danger, she was to locate him and call authorities. That message would be one of his last. Around 1:45 a.m. on May 15th, Masson was driving his gray car when he accidentally struck a motorcycle carrying one of the men from the bar. The collision reignited the previous argument. Without warning, the man, later identified as Mario Omada Sanchez Lopez, drew a gun and fired through Masson's driver's side window. Masson was struck in the head and killed instantly. Investigators traced Sanchez Lopez to a criminal network known for drug trafficking and extortion in the region. The man had a history of violent confrontations, and authorities believe the bar argument had escalated because Sanchez Lopez viewed any challenge to his authority as a personal affront. The only witness willing to testify against Sanchez Lopez was murdered days later, reinforcing the reach and ruthlessness of the network involved. Law enforcement continues to face difficulties building the case, as fear prevents many locals from cooperating. Masson left behind a grieving family, including his parents and 2 younger siblings. What began as a fun night out turned into a fatal intersection with a violent organization operating far beyond ordinary reach. In moments, normal life was replaced with tragedy, showing how even minor interactions can have deadly consequences when criminal influence is nearby. Think you're safe just having a night out in paradise? Think again. If that sounds terrifying, the next story takes fear to another level. Number 4, hit at the resort, 2 Canadians at Hotel-controlled. It's time for a really unfortunate story. As many would expect, this tragedy didn't occur in a dark alley or a hidden street corner. It happened in a luxury resort where guests wore wristbands, not weapons. Yet even here, the cartels had their way in. On January 21st, 2022, gunfire erupted at Hotel-controlled without warning. 2 Canadian men in their 30s were among a group of tourists when another guest calmly approached, pulled out a gun, and opened fire. Panic erupted. Guests ducked behind tables, children screamed, and staff tried to contain chaos. Surveillance footage later showed the shooter walking away casually, as if it was a normal day. Investigators later discovered that one of the victims had a criminal record in Canada, linked to drug and weapons trafficking. Authorities determined the attack was a targeted hit, connected to a dangerous cartel with operations spanning Canada and Mexico. The conflict arose from unpaid debts, and the cartel had sent enforcers to ensure the debt was collected, regardless of the public setting. Law enforcement later tracked the shooter to a network of international criminals, though he managed to evade immediate capture. Both men's families were shocked to learn they had been targeted while on vacation. The Canadian victims had spouses and children, left suddenly without fathers and husbands. Authorities warned that the case highlighted the reach of organized crime. No place is guaranteed safe, even when gated and heavily staffed. The incident forced the resort to increase security, but it could not erase the fact that a controlled environment had become a stage for murder. Think your vacation spot is safe because it has guards and wristbands? This case says otherwise. From a resort hit to a cross-border brag that ended in disappearance, the next story is even more horrifying. Number 5. Vacation turns into ambush. Rafael Cardona and Gloria Embriz. On December 11, 2024, at approximately 3:20 p.m., American couple Rafael Cardona, 53, and Gloria Embriz, 50, were driving a Ford pickup through Angamacutiro, Michoacan, an area long marked by turf battles between the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, and local rival groups. Their plan was simple: visit relatives for the holiday season. Moments later, bullets shattered the calm. Gunmen on motorcycles and in a pickup sprayed their truck with automatic fire. Gloria died instantly, struck by multiple rounds in the driver's side cabin. Rafael survived long enough to be taken to a nearby hospital, but succumbed to his injuries hours later. Their vehicle, bearing family license plates, was riddled with holes, windows shattered, and blood visible on the upholstery. Authorities believe the attack was not random. Investigators found that Cardona was related by marriage to a local mayor, potentially putting the couple on the radar of criminal groups seeking leverage or signaling a warning to local officials. Neighbors reported hearing multiple vehicles and the roar of gunfire echoing through the town. Ballistic analysis showed that high-caliber weapons often used by CJNG were involved, indicating professional shooters rather than opportunistic criminals. Local residents told police that these ambushes were sometimes carried out to intimidate local authorities or settle scores, and unsuspecting travelers were collateral damage. The couple had 2 adult children and several grandchildren, all left behind to grapple with the sudden violent loss. Authorities continued to investigate possible motives and have identified potential suspects connected to cartel networks, but arrests have been limited due to the gang's presence and intimidation tactics in the region. Surveillance footage collected from nearby businesses helped reconstruct the attack route, showing gunmen fleeing along back roads minutes after the shooting. The tragedy underscores how routine drives, even with no connection to criminal activity, can intersect fatally with violent power struggles. What should have been a normal visit turned into a deadly ambush, leaving families shattered and a community rattled. The spotlight often shines on tourist resorts, but danger also hides in family visits and daily routines. And for our final case, we turn back to one of the earliest and most shocking examples of tourists colliding with cartel violence. Number 6. The Lebaron Family Massacre. On November 4th, 2019, around 9:30 a.m., members of the American-Mexican Lebaron family were traveling in a convoy of white SUVs through the Sonora-Chihuahua border region. 9 people, including children, were in the convoy. Gunmen in 2 trucks, later identified as associated with the Juarez cartel, ambushed them. Shooters opened fire without warning. The convoy was stopped roadside, and the attackers executed their plan with ruthless precision. Children were among the dead, alongside adults, leaving a scene of devastation that shocked communities on both sides of the border. Investigators found multiple calibers of firearms at the site, indicating coordination and planning. The vehicles were riddled with bullets, windows blown out, and personal belongings scattered. The Lebaron family, dual US-Mexico citizens, had traveled the route often, but familiarity offered no protection. The Juarez cartel had likely targeted the convoy for reasons tied to ongoing conflicts with rival groups, using public violence as a warning. The massacre prompted immediate diplomatic attention. US and Mexican authorities opened joint investigations, but the complexity of cartel networks and fear of retaliation made gathering witness testimony difficult. Families of the victims spoke publicly about their loss, highlighting the children killed and the scale of the tragedy. Despite international outrage, arrests have been few, and several suspects remain at large, illustrating the reach and impunity of these criminal networks. Security measures, planning, and local knowledge provided no safeguard against the attack. The vehicles themselves, meant to protect and transport the family safely, became death traps under organized firepower. Bullet fragments, shattered glass, and overturned SUVs were all that remained of a convoy that began the morning expecting only routine travel. What do you think about these stories? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep diving videos.